Welcome to MathSum, your summary for all your math sums. Today we're going to be doing the first lesson for grade 12, which is about arithmetic series. So let's go on with the lesson. So in grade 12, I'm going to start with an overview of all the series we're going to do. So there's going to be some arithmetic series, some geometric series, and also some infinite geometric series. However, this lesson we're going to be doing some arithmetic series, and the next lesson we're going to be doing geometric series and infinite geometric series. So to start off the lesson, what is a series? Well, a series is simply the sum of the first n terms of a pattern, and it's normally denoted S. So while T is denoted as a term of a pattern, S is denoted the sum of the first n terms. For example, we have S1 equals to T1 because S1 is just the first term. S2 equals T1 plus T2, which is the sum of the first two terms. S3 equals T1 plus T2 plus T3, and so on, and Sn equals T1 plus T2 plus T3 all the way up to Tn, so the sum of the first n terms. So we're going to be doing arithmetic series. However, in order to do arithmetic series, you will need to know what an arithmetic pattern is. I do have a video and I'll post it here about arithmetic patterns. So our first question on arithmetic series is, how do we find 3 plus 5 plus 7 plus 9 plus 11 plus 13? Okay, so how we do this is we actually start with, we have 6 terms here, and we start with 7 plus 9, the two middle terms. Now 7 plus 9 we can actually replace with the average, right? The average of 7, 9 is 8. So we can replace with 8 plus 8. Okay. We can also replace 5 and 11 with the average as 8 plus 8. Okay, because as you can see, 7 plus 9 is just 16, which is 8 plus 8. 5 plus 11 is 16, which is 8 plus 8. And again, we can also do 3 and 13 with 8 plus 8, because that's their average as well. So 3 plus 13 equals 16, and the average is 16 divided by 2, which is 8. So in total, we'll get the sum is equal to how many 8s there are, which is the number of terms. So 6 times the average, which is 8. Okay. However, I'm going to write it as 6 times. Okay, how do we work out this 8? Well, one way of working out the 8 was looking at the first term, which is 3, and the last term, which is 13, and we look at the average of them. So in this case, 8 will be 3 plus 13 divided by 2. Okay, and that gives you 8. So that's the average of the first and the last term, and it will be 6 of them because we're adding 6 terms, and that should give you 6 times 8, which is 48. Okay. However, keep in mind this kind of form of it, because for the general formula we're going to be using something very similar. So how do we do the general form? Well, Sn, which is the sum of the first n terms, will just be n times the average term, right? What is the term on average? And as we said in the example, how do we work out this average? We would say the first term plus the last term divided by 2. Okay, so we n times the first term plus the last term divided by 2, and that equals n times a plus l over 2. So a is going to be the first term and l is going to be the last term. And again, the next line we have n over 2 times a plus, we can replace l with a plus n minus 1 times d. Okay, so you can replace l with a plus n minus 1 times d from the arithmetic pattern. We know that this is an arithmetic pattern, so the last term, if there are n terms, that's the nth term, right? A plus n minus 1 times d, that's the nth term. And we add it and we simplify, we get our final formula Sn equals n over 2 times 2a plus n minus 1 times d. Now you need to know this formula because this is very useful. And again at the bottom here I say a is the first term and d is the common difference of the arithmetic sequence. So let's try to consolidate this with an example. So our question says, how many terms in the arithmetic sequence 3 plus 5 plus 7 all the way up, so whatever number will add up to 440. Now it's quite a lot of information here, but what do we need to take down? Well, in our formula, we want to use this formula, right? Because it's an arithmetic series, it's the sum of terms. So a equals 3, that's our first that's the first thing we need to note. A is 3. Then d equals 2, because we know that 3 and 5 the difference is 2. And 5 and 7 the difference is 2. And what do we need to find? Well, we need to find n. We need to find how many terms in the arithmetic sequence. Okay, so and we also have that they add up to 440. So we have that Sn is equal to 440. So we always start by writing down the formula because that's always very useful in substituting in whatever information we have. So Sn equals n over 2 times 2a plus n minus 1 times d. Okay, then we substitute. Sn is 440, right? We're given that the sum is 440. Then n over 2, and we have 2a will be 2 times 3, which is 6, and n minus 1, n is our unknown, and d is 2. Okay, we can simplify this further. We get 440 equals n over 2 times, so we can say 2n plus 4. Okay, so we can take the 2 in and we can divide 2n plus 4 by the 2 and we get 440 equals n times n plus 2. Okay, and we can simplify this even further. So we want to make it actually equal to 0, so we're going to take this 440 to the other side. So we get n squared plus 2n minus 440 equals 0. And we can just factorize this. This is a binomial. We know how to factorize this as n plus 22. Okay, and n minus 20 equals 0. Now pay attention to that yellow sticky note at the above. We have that n has to be a natural number, so it has to be positive. So n equals 20 or n equals negative 22. However, we can just say n equals 20 because n is not equal to negative 22, right? We have to, however, we still have to show that that is not an option. Okay, so we have to show this is not equal. So n is not equal to negative 22, and so our only answer is n equals 20. Okay, and that's how you do this question. So we have that how many terms? 20 terms add up to 440. Now, another kind of class of questions that you can get with arithmetic sequences is you have to solve a simultaneous equation. Now I'm just going to do a quick recap on how to solve simultaneous equations, and we're going to use elimination, the method, because that is probably the quickest method in an exam. So if we have a plus d equals 5 and a plus 3d equals 9, we have the two equations, label them 1 and 2. Now we subtract them. So what do we must subtract them? Well, if I write 2 as we say from 2 minus 1. So we write 2 here, a plus 3d equals 9. Okay, and we have a plus d equals 5. If we subtract them, Then a minus a, that will be 0. 3d minus d is 2d. Okay, so we're subtracting like terms. And 9 minus 5 is 4. Okay, as you can see, we get 2d equals 4 from here. So here 2d equals 4 and d equals 2. We can substitute that back into 1 and we get a plus 2 equals 5 and a equals 3. Okay, so the most important part, 2 minus 1, we want to get rid of one of the variables, right? There's two variables and two equations, so we want to get rid of the a. Okay, as you can see, there's an a here and an a here, so if we subtract them, the a disappears and we are left with d, and we can solve for d. And that's how you solve a simultaneous equation. Now let's try to see this in action. This question says the sum of the first 10 terms of an arithmetic sequence is 60. Okay, and the sum of the second and the sixth term is 9. Determine the series. So this is even more information. However, let's break it up information by piece by piece. So our first thing what we have is we have that the sum of the first 10 terms is 60, right? Now we can actually use our formula for this, and we get that S10 equals 10 over 2, okay, times, now we don't know what our first term is, so 2a, we don't know what our common difference is, okay, so 2a plus 90 is n minus 1. Okay, and S10 is 60, so we get 60 equal to 5 times 2a plus 90. Okay, and we can divide by 5, we get 12 equals 2a plus 90. Okay, and then I think that's the simplest form of our equation, and that's going to be our equation 1. Okay, so the next equation, the next piece of information we have is the sum of the second and sixth term is 9. Okay, so if the sum of the second and sixth terms is 9, what do we mean by that? So firstly, what is the second term, right? The second term, so we have that t2 is the second term, plus the sum, plus t6 equals 9. Now what is t2? Well, we can actually write here, you can see this formula from the arithmetic patterns. We can write each term as in the form of a with the first term and d the common difference. So t2 can be written as a plus n minus 1 times d, so plus d. Okay, that's t2, and t6 can be written as a plus n minus 1 times d, which is plus 5d, because we know that n equals 6 in that case. Okay, and that equals a 9. Yeah. Sorry if my 9s or a's looked similar. And we can simplify this a bit. We get 2a plus 60 equals 9. Okay, so let's just write these equations down. Okay, so we have 2a plus 9d equals 12, and we have 2a plus 60 equals 9. Okay, so those are our two equations. And that's how we got those two equations, right? Now we have a simultaneous equation in terms of a and d. And now we can actually solve for a and d. Okay, so as you can see here, we have that there's a 2a in the first equation and a 2a in the second equation, and we're going to use elimination in this question. Okay, so we can actually subtract the two equations from each other. So when we subtract them, I'm just erasing this. Okay, so when you subtract them from each other, if this is 1, this is 1, and this is our 2. So now we say 1 minus 2. And what do we get? Well, we get 2a minus 2a. So the a's will cancel, and we get 9d minus 60. So 3d on the left hand side equals 12 minus 9 equals 3. So we actually get that d equals 1. Okay, so we have d equals 1. Now we can substitute into any equation, but let's choose the first one. So 2a plus 9d. Okay, so we're going to substitute d into that equation. 9 times d, so that's just 9, equals 12. So we have that 2a equals 3, and a equals 3 over 2. Okay, and what is a? A is our first term. So we have our first term, we have a common difference. That means we can actually find the series. So our series is 3 over 2, 5 over 2, because we're adding 1 each time, 7 over 2, and so forth. And that will be our answer. So that's how we got it. We set up a simultaneous equation from the information we were given, then we solve it for a and d, our first term and our common difference, and then we get our answer. So that leaves us to the end of our lesson. And of course, I will have some practice for you guys, because we all know practice makes perfect. So I'll leave the answers to these questions in the comments down below. And if you have any questions regarding anything or any requests for future lessons, please let me know.